I think it's important for me to start this episode by reminding you that indeed Dan Mahar is here. He's right there. If you're watching on YouTube, you see him right now. Dan, you're a good guy. Love having you with me on this podcast every week. How's it going?
Ah, it's going well, I guess. I'm not a Carolina Hurricane, so it's going well.
Or I think, did we talk about it last week? I think it had just finished for the Leafs too. No, we recorded before game 7. Let's not even go back there. It's still too soon for me. We recorded early enough a week ago so that I could be done in time to watch game 7, which I wish I had not watched.
Yeah, but tell me this though: does the sting of Game 7 subside at all watching what Carolina is doing with them?
To some degree, actually, yes, it does. It
Yeah,
makes you think that at least the Leafs put up some fight. It's not over
exactly,
yet for Carolina, but yeah,
exactly.
your point's well taken.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that Dan was acknowledged early because I'm going to steal a little bit of time, a little bit more than usual. I'm going to be the time hog here on the podcast as we get things started. Remember, find either of us on social media. We're on X. Dan at his name, Dan Mahar. I'm at Farwell_OHL. Plenty to get to in our inbox as well later in this episode. Send emails anytime. OHLpodcast@Rogers.com. But it is the month of May, which is the month of Farwell for Hire, a fundraiser I do to raise money for cystic fibrosis research. So I'm going to shamelessly plug a couple of things as we get underway. First of all, our Farwell for Hire 50-50 draw, which has got a jackpot over $100,000 now. So the take home is more than $50,000, and you've got until Friday, May the 31st. Friday, May the 30th at noon to buy your tickets. CF5050.ca. CF5050.ca. Get a ticket. You got to be in Ontario or know somebody in Ontario to buy one for you, but get your tickets before Friday. Get in on that jackpot. Help us raise more money. And one of the other things I wanted to mention is I just came today from a downtown Kitchener restaurant that has just been hugely supportive over the years. And I wanted to give them a little bit of a plug because I know that fans of this league that come into Kitchener for games are always wondering, well, where do I eat before a game? Where's a good place to go? And there are options with the Rangers doing some renovations at the arena and the city involved in that too. There will be more options right at the rink, another option anyway at the rink starting next season. But if you're ever so inclined, and I would call ahead to make a rezo because it's a smaller place, but you will not be disappointed with the food at a place on Victoria Street in Kitchener, not far from the rink, a few blocks away, called The Lab. And you're going to get some of the best food you'll find in the city in that place. They were big supporters of us today. Just wanted to give them a little bit of a shout out. Think of The Lab next time you're paying a visit to Kitchener for a hockey game or any other reason. Stop in for some good grub and some good people making that grub for you. Okay, shameless plugs out of the way. Let's get down to business, Dan Mahar. Would it be fair to say that in this Memorial Cup so far, the London Knights have been tested more than they were tested at any other point in the OHL playoffs this year?
You know, that's a great question. It looks that way. I mean, the games have been tight, but then you think of all the tight games the London had over the year. They just find ways to win. They had lots of tight games, sometimes against not even the powerhouses in the OHL, but they know how to play those games. They know how to win them. And Memorial Cup always finds a feeling out process, right? You don't know each other that well. You've done maybe some video, so it's a little tentative start in these games for these teams, but they've been pushed. They've been pushed late in both games, and they found ways to win them. But yeah, they're not winning by the margins some might expect.
Yeah, just based on the way they went through the OHL playoffs, right? A 16-1 mark, the best ever that's been posted in the OHL. I know we had a 12-0 team and a 12-1 team back when you could get a bye in the OHL playoffs, but this was a 16-1 run for the London Knights, and nobody really seemed to test them the way that both Moncton and Rimouski now have early. I think your point's well taken, Dan, in that there's this feeling out process, etc. Short tournament. You haven't seen these teams before. All you can do is prepare the best you can using video, etc. And the other point I wanted to make that you made too, they still find a way to win, because if it's one thing Ontario Hockey League fans learned this season, is that the London Knights are going to find a way to beat you. One way or another, they will. And I thought in London's second game, day 3 of the tournament, Rimouski pushed in the third, and Austin Elliott was there for the London Knights to make sure that he didn't give up the goal that gave Rimouski the lead until, of course, London could get that lead and then finish it off with the empty netter.
Yeah, you can't say that Rimouski didn't get chances for sure. They had some great looks, and I mean, there's a few subtle things about the London Knights that you notice when you watch them a lot. And one thing I certainly noticed in this Memorial Cup is the shooting lanes are so hard to find against London. Even when you think you have a golden chance, they let someone go. They are the best junior hockey team I have ever seen at scrambling to the right lanes, getting pads, getting sticks in the way. It is really hard to get a good shot off against London because someone's coming to get a tip or a lane. And I think both Moncton and Rimouski are finding that. They had a couple good looks, but you're right. Austin Elliott was right there every time they got a look. And then, of course, London, you make a mistake against them, they capitalize in both games, late in both games, overtime in one and late in the third in the other. A little bit of a defensive mistake, bing, bang, boom, and it's in. So that's what you can't do against London. You just can't make those mistakes. They will make up for their own mistakes, but they'll make you pay for yours.
One of the other things that has stood out to me, again, early returns. Dan and I are recording this after day 3 of the Memorial Cup, the second game that the Knights played. So they beat Moncton, then they beat Rimouski. They've taken care of the queue so far, to look at it that way. But in the 2 games I have seen so far, Dan, it looks to me as though Easton Cowan wants everybody at the tournament and everybody watching this tournament, the eyes of junior hockey, to recognize that he is the MVP, not some guy named Gavin McKenna.
Yeah. Easton Cowan's finding ways. Well, we saw it all year in the OHL, right? He finds ways to produce at key moments. And how about the empty net track record on that guy? I think if you pull your goalie as an opponent of Easton Cowan, you might as well just put it on the board, shouldn't you? Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think he's if I'm not mistaken, I believe tied for second all time as a London Knight for points in the Memorial Cup, just 2 off the lead of 14 points, which I'm sure he is going to break this tournament. So yeah, a bit of a gamer, and it's he's stepping up when they need him. So a few more games to go for him to get that record.
It's funny. You talk about Easton Cowan and the empty net track record. Can I add to that, if I may be so bold? Does anybody draw penalties better than Landon Sim? For a big guy, boy, oh boy, he tends to find ways to get mixed up with other players and then end up somehow on the ice while the other team skates to the penalty box.
Oh, does he ever? I mean, I think, yeah, I've seen some commentary from fans of the other 3 teams in the Memorial Cup. Well, the 2 that they've played so far, saying, that was a dive. That was a welcome to what the rest of the Ontario Hockey League knows. Landon Sim is one of those players, and there's a few. London always has a few that know exactly when it's time to try and draw that penalty. And you do it well enough, you do it often enough, you're going to get a few of those power plays that you need. So be wary. And when you're going in, you want to take a little extra shot or have lose body position and get a stick in there. These guys are going to sell it, and few are as good at selling it as Landon Sim.
We have been talking about this all season long on our Ontario Hockey League coverage. This is the OHL podcast after all, but where the London Knights are right now was the mission since they had the heartbreak in Saginaw a season ago, right? 22 seconds to go in the game, and Saginaw scores the goal that would give them the Memorial Cup championship, a 4-3 win in that one, after the Knights, by the way, had come back from a 3-0 deficit. So everything in London this season was about this moment, getting to the Memorial Cup and having a different outcome. They're off to a terrific start at 2-0, obviously. I can't help but think, though, Dan, and this touches on something that you alluded to last week on our episode. I think we may have seen a preview of the Memorial Cup final in the second game of this tournament between Moncton and the London Knights.
Yeah, I mean, people asked me coming in who did I think was going to win, and we talked about this in the podcast. We both said London. We thought London would win this, but these teams are no slouches. None of the 3 of them. We talked about Rimouski as the host earning their way in. Wasn't really a backdoor entry. Moncton's been terrific all year. and Medicine Hat, we know you've got the firepower they've got. I like you just referenced though, I kind of felt that that Moncton team might be the one that London's gonna see at the end of this tournament. And we know Caleb Denoyer is gonna go top 5 in this NHL draft. And we saw some of the reasons why in game one. I think he had a couple defensive miscues he'd like back. But you know he's going to come gunning now that he knows what the Knights are all about. You can't let up against them. That team has some sneaky good players. You know, we saw the point shot through there from Moran. We saw this team knows how to play hockey. They knew how to counter a lot of what London was trying to do. They knew how to work the puck to the slot. I think they faced the same challenge a lot of teams faced against London is getting bodies inside in front of the net. London will keep you outside, and you're going to have to score on those longer shots, and that doesn't happen as often. So, but that Moncton team, you could see. I felt, Mike, watching that game a higher level than anything London faced in the OHL March through the playoffs, and they faced some really good teams. But that was a next level to me, and I think you're right. I think we might see more from them this tournament. And London certainly they needed overtime to beat them, and I think next time, who knows? But very evenly matched teams.
It goes without saying that you never overlook or write off a team coached by Gardner McDougall. It's pretty simple, right? And I mean, if I had the stats right in front of me, nobody would believe them anyway, but it's just a ridiculous record of championships at UNB. The time he pops in to just coach a team in St. John that had been bounced early and come back after they were as hosts and help them win the Memorial Cup. Now he's there coaching in Moncton at this level with his son as the general manager in Moncton. I mean, the script just writes itself. The only problem for Gardner McDougall with this particular script is there's a guy named Dale Hunter and 1,000 OHL wins on the other bench. But still, I think I'm looking forward to that side of it. Should this tournament turn out the way we expect it to, again, these are very early returns, but Moncton, London in the final would just be delicious, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think that's a storyline that is really going to come to the forefront of this tournament is the coaching behind the bench. Everyone knows all about Dale Hunter and his track record in London, but you're absolutely right. If those of you don't know Gardner McDougall, look up his track record because just like unbelievable numbers at UNB and Canadian University hockey was a hired gun to come in and win a Memorial Cup for a team that had sacked their coach late in the year recently, and then of course this year just cruising through with Moncton, a team that has had trouble getting there in the past. So that guy knows what he's doing. He'll make adjustments. London should be very wary because they took them to overtime in game one and lost, and you know Gardner McDougall is going to make adjustments for the final. And even though he looks like a Scooby-Doo villain, the guy knows how to coach.
Speaking of stories, have we got Memorial Cup stories for you? One of the best known voices in the Ontario Hockey League will join us in just a moment live from Rimouski, so we'll check in with him. Also, that inbox that I referenced earlier, full this week. We'll dive into that. And is it time for hockey in general to take a page out of Paul Maurice's book? We'll get into all of that as we continue this week on the OHL podcast. The fastest game on ice just hit another gear. Welcome to the Stanley Cup playoffs, where legends are made and every shift could turn the tide. And now, with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can take every slap shot, breakaway, and overtime thriller to the next level. New to betting on the Stanley Cup playoffs? You're in for an exciting time. Getting started is a breeze. Fire up the DraftKings Sportsbook app, pick your team to win, lock in your wager, and you're off to the races. It's fast, it's simple, and it puts you right in the middle of the action. Here's the kicker. New customers who bet just $5 will score $300 in bonus bets if their wager hits. That's right. Turn $5 into a playoff payout. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code THPN. That's promo code THPN to unlock $300 in bonus bets when your $5 bet wins. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. I I think you know him as the voice on OHL radio and the guy who helps out on the OHL draft coverage each and every year. And somewhere around all of that, he finds time to call the games for the Sarnia Sting on your TV out of Sarnia. Our good friend Terry Doyle joins the OHL podcast from the site of the Memorial Cup in Rimouski. Good to see you, my friend. How is Rimouski?
Rimouski is good. It's the month of May. I don't know how you have time for this either. And of course, the shirt you're wearing as well. But you know what? I was here in 2009 for the Memorial Cup, back here again. And, it is a smaller community. It's sort of a smaller community that's spread out a little bit along the shores of the St. Lawrence, but very friendly people. But it can be a challenge running a tournament in a smaller community like this with hotels and some of the infrastructure. But the folks here are so friendly and do such a great job. And here we are with another Memorial Cup tournament.
How many in a row is this for you now, Terry?
24, going back to game one of 2000. Rimouski, of course, won that tournament against the Barrie Colts in the final, and that was in Halifax. So every game from game one of 2000 right on through into this 24th straight Memorial Cup. And I dabbled in the Peterborough Memorial Cup in 96, since, of course, I lived there as well.
You mentioned having been in Rimouski in '09 as part of this 24 consecutive year run of Memorial Cups. How much difference is there from Rimouski in '09 to Rimouski here in 25?
Well, one of the challenges just coming into this tournament was back in '09, we could fly into Montjoli Airport, which is about half an hour away, and then they had shuttles bringing people in. That airport does not receive Air Canada flights anymore, so made things a lot more of a challenge. The charter flights, of course, the teams could come in, but most of us had to come in from Quebec City, for example, and then that's about a 3 hour drive. Certainly, like a lot of places, a little bit more commercialism and built up some of the areas. The one challenge this year is they decide to do a lot of the construction right now, including the main drag that runs right along the St. Lawrence. It's closed. Part of it, you have to detour into the city. It's made things, I think, so far from where I'm staying to get to the rink. I've tried 3 different routes so far. I think the one I'm on now, probably by distance, it's the longest one, but I think it avoids the traffic. And it feels like if you go 20 feet in Rimouski, you find another stop sign. So, and never mind roundabouts, it's all stop signs. So it's been interesting. So taking a bit of a longer way distance wise, but I think it's been the best way in. But yeah, the arena's had a little bit of work done to it since then, some suites added, a little modernization. Where I'm sitting here, it's pretty much the same spot I sat in '09. They put a little bit of work in, but I'm basically, as you can see, it's arena seats where they've added just a little bench in front. You can sort of see there where it's just a small table. But we'll see as we're even having this discussion right now, it's like sitting in the seats in the stands where if someone wants to get by you, you stand up and let them go by. So that might happen in the next little while we're having this discussion.
I know it's early days of the tournament, but you've been there, you've settled in, you're finding your best route to get to the rink, etc. Many people listening and watching right now, Terry, would be kind of like me, learning what they can learn about this Memorial Cup tournament from the website. What else is on offer around Rimouski to celebrate the hosting of the Junior Hockey Championship?
Well, like any Memorial Cup, there's a fan fest, and it's going on next door where they have a big parking lot that's taken over. They bring in concerts, and of course, people can who don't have a ticket can watch the game out there or have a little social time and maybe a beverage before or after the game. And they brought the Memorial Cup. The opening ceremony was done out there on Thursday night, so they have that going on. And then, there, like a lot of Memorial Cups, there is a Hockey Hall of Fame display going on. Now, sometimes the Hall of Fame is on site, basically right by the arena or in the arena. In this case, it's about a 5 minute walk away where they have that set up. So that is going on. And it, like a lot of Memorial Cups, it just takes over the community as well, and people able to take it in. And whether, when you go to even a restaurant, the chicken restaurant, as they, of course, it's known in Quebec. We don't have to give them a plug on here, but they have signs up for the Memorial Cup there as well, and everything like that. So yeah, it's just one of those where it does take over the community, and there's the games, but there are other events around it. There was a fan breakfast that took place that happens at every Memorial Cup as well, where fans from across the CHL gather. That started back in Moncton back in 2006, and it's pretty much gone every year. And where they gather, I think this year here it's about 160 people, and they're going to raise funds for the local Legion as part of it as well. So it's really a case. I call it, for people who aren't familiar, but maybe you're familiar with the Grey Cup. It's sort of junior hockey's edition of the Grey Cup, except it goes for 10 days.
I love the reference to the chicken restaurant, Terry. I remember when they served that chicken's restaurant's food in the media room in Ottawa. The challenge was they only had like 10 boxes, so you had to get there quick or you weren't getting fed that night.
No, it's like, of course, there's the chain that's known well in Ontario, and then Quebec has their own. That certainly people will sort of, say that they like that one better, for example. But yes, I went in there, just earlier today as we were recording this and had lunch in there. And indeed, it was a case where there were signs up there. There was a promotion on that you could get a Memorial Cup or a Rimouski Oceanic glass as part of purchasing some of the product as well. So, and that's where the tournament has taken over the area when you are 10, 15 minutes from the arena and there are still things about the Memorial Cup there.
So you mentioned earlier, Terry, this is one of the smaller markets to host the Memorial Cup. And I remember a time, maybe a decade or so ago, we were talking about this kind of being a case of the haves and the have-nots, and only the haves are capable of competing for the hosting rights to the Memorial Cup. Is this a sign maybe if Rimouski can do it, it's not just for the biggest markets in the CHL to host this championship?
Well, the Quebec League does things a little bit differently, and I think they know their heritage in the province of Quebec. So the bigger cities, in a lot of cases in the Quebec League, are in the Maritimes, but they're not just going to rotate it around the Maritimes. So if you go back in the history of the Cup, quite often it feels like it goes to a Maritime community, then it comes back to a Quebec community, and vice versa, back and forth. And that's a case of what's happened here. I think of, '09 was Rimouski. In 12, we thought we were going to the Maritimes, but there were some things going on and some politics and some transgressions maybe one of the teams had done in recruiting. So we went to Shawinigan. And then 15 was Quebec City. And of course, that was the end of Le Colisée in Quebec. So you go through that. But I think in Quebec, they do realize they have to open up to as many teams as possible. And yes, this is a smaller arena. I'm trying to think where I compare to. Is it like putting it in Guelph, for example, or somewhere like that? That's not a small rink, but compared to a London, a Kitchener, an Oshawa, and things like that, it's a smaller facility, but they make it work. And of course, around it, sponsorship has to pick up the slack a little bit. Where if you're not going to sell 7,500 tickets, can you make it up in sponsorship and cooperation? And the ownership here in Rimouski certainly has jumped on board with that and all in to make sure it's going to work.
Of all the Memorial Cups you've been to, Terry, the 24 straight now, do you have a favorite that stands out to you?
So Halifax is a place that can do the Memorial Cup in their sleep. They have the arena, they have the hotels, you name it, all walking distance. And that just makes it so amazing because you walk out the door, you don't have to make any plans before or after the game, you just run into people. And that makes it so great. Kamloops a couple years ago was actually amazing for that as well. They call themselves a tournament city, and of course they're known for curling as well. And it's worked out so well because indeed, I remember in the Kamloops, I was working with the producer as well. He was working on something. I said, I'm going to go for a quick walk. I'll come back in half an hour and then we'll head to the rink. I didn't get outside the hotel property radius because then I ran into it was parents from Peterborough that I got to know from one of the players and just got chatting with them. And it just works out so well. Those are my favorites, Mike, when you can be that little small Memorial Cup city within the community itself. And 2 times in Halifax now, of course, 2019 and back to 2000, that's got to jump out as certainly a couple of the favorites. But it's just that city just does things so easily. They obviously put a lot of hard work into it, but it just comes naturally because of the geography. And anyone's been to Halifax, the Citadel at the top of the hill, the rink's right below it, the hotels are right around there, the waterfront, the casino, the little sheds they have there that have the different food products, things like that. You can walk along the water, you name it. There's so much to do there in Halifax. It just makes it so easy that you can just, once you get yourself to your hotel, you can just walk back and forth to the rink and just that sometimes I would say the highlight of the 24 is those types of communities.
We know that next year the Memorial Cup will be hosted in Kelowna. That's 2026. And the site, which was announced November, December of 2024, which means we are about 6 months or so away, Terry, from finding out who will host it in 2027. Of course, it's coming back to the Ontario Hockey League that year. This is the OHL podcast. We know Kitchener has expressed interest. Any other rumblings you're hearing about the OHL markets that might be interested in casting a bid for 27?
Well, as you said, first of all, the OHL seems to, in the past at least, have pushed the hosting announcement further out into the new year of the following year. So we find out, early in 26, for example. But right now, Mike, honestly, Kitchener is the heavy favorite. Plain and simple, that's everything you hear. There is a Kitchener contingent here in Rimouski, but I can tell you the Rangers, they always support the Memorial Cup, whether they have the tournament on the radar or not. I remember talking to people with the Rangers. They said, people came and supported us in '08 from other cities. We go and support them. And I know, and you and I know a lot of people around the Rangers organization that have made a habit every year of going to the Memorial Cup. as part of obviously enjoying seeing part of the country, but just supporting their tournament because the Rangers were supported in '08. And, certainly, Oshawa wants to get back in there. They've been trying to host it. And of course, they had a chance, and COVID made things difficult from that standpoint, whether the Generals are going to be in the right place in terms of their competitiveness because they've been so good the last couple of years. Would they be ready for a 27? But, the Sioux, obviously, same thing, COVID, and then they were maybe finished second, you might say, to Saginaw from last year's Memorial Cup. But everything I certainly hear, Mike, is that Kitchener right now is the heavy favorite. And who knows, there might be another team that says, another city that says, well, okay, you guys go ahead and be the favorite, and we'll slide right in and come up with a bid that'll wow everyone. But right now, Rangers Nation is certainly leading the way.
Can you put into context for us, Terry? And I mean, fans of this podcast will understand the importance of junior hockey to them and in the markets that they're listening from. But really, it seems to me we get the World Juniors at Christmas time when all eyes are on junior hockey in this country. And then we have the Memorial Cup as the next big opportunity. What does this tournament mean to junior hockey in Canada?
I think it just shows the fabric of junior hockey in Canada. And while it is a championship tournament, it's also a showcase. And it's a chance to showcase the cities that are playing in it, a chance to showcase the city that is hosting it. And of course, as the most important thing, showcase the players and the stories of the players. Whether it's a draft eligible player that's going to be a superstar in the National Hockey League in a few years, whether it's a great story of a player who's overcome adversity during their career. So many things that we see over the course of this tournament year in and year out. Some years it's a great tournament for scouts to watch because they have players, eligible for the draft. But some years it's 19 and 20-year-olds that have already been drafted that lead the way. And so NHL teams will take a look and maybe put them, add a few notes maybe for trades down the road. But they're not necessarily looking at draft eligibles per se. It all depends on the year. But you look at that. It does bring the junior hockey country together, you might say, and certainly competing with the National Hockey League playoffs and for eyeballs at the same time. And, the networks have to be mindful of that when they're scheduling this and what they're scheduling against it. But it definitely brings people together. And it is that uniting factor as well, where, as soon as I got here to the rink, picked up my accreditation, I walk outside to check out the FanFest area. There's a gentleman, I don't even remember his name. He's from Seattle. I see him every year at the Cup. We say hello, we shake hands. I don't even remember his name. People have told me his name, but we know each other to see each other. Those who have been around a Memorial Cup have heard the name Santa. Kim Thomas from Calgary is his name, but he's been around this tournament for so many years with the Junior Hockey Junkies. He goes back to 1999 when the Calgary Hitmen were, of course, in the Cup in Ottawa, and it's a group that he's brought from Calgary. There are fans that I'm good friends with that are longtime Plymouth Whalers fans, so they're not around OHL games anymore. They'll drop into Windsor, go up to Sarnia or Flint for a game, but they're here at this tournament every year. They set up their schedule and do that. I got a chance to hang out with some of them earlier today before we recorded this. So it is a case that it just brings people together. And so many, people that it's like they pick up the stories. They don't see each other for 11 and a half months and they get back together and pick up those stories. But then from a broadcast standpoint and a showcase standpoint, it really shows off junior hockey to the nation.
That is a fantastic story and the way you've woven it together. And it makes me think, Terry, about your own passion for this. And you alluded earlier being around that 96 Memorial Cup because it's in Peterborough, which is your hometown. So maybe that's why this game is in your blood. But I've been following you since the Loose Pucks days when I started in this league, the blog that you and Sanaya Saperji used to work on together. You talk about now 24 straight Memorial Cups, and here you are back in Rimouski. What is it about this game at this level that appeals so much to you?
It's seeing the stars of the future and just 16 to 20-year-olds and being right close to it. And there's a picture I put out almost every year, every second year. It's up in the press box in Sarnia. It's Steven Stamkos lined up against John Tavares, and I say you got to watch these guys play against each other for $20 when they were there, or $250 a few years later. And it's just that tight knit, and it's the people. And it's whether it's yourself, whether it's other people we deal with from the media side, from the staff of the leagues. There's people that I know from across the country that, the reporter from Kelowna, for example, whose first name is Doyle. If we cross paths at a tournament, it's like we just pick up our stories and we may have not seen each other for 5 or 6 years. And it's like old lost friends. You talk about with Sanaya. The 2000 Memorial Cup in Halifax, her and I were covering, of course, the OHL. We had a couple of people that were based in Plymouth, John Bauer III and Ed Roberts. We were based in Plymouth covering the Whalers. We all decided, hey, what do you think of going to the Memorial Cup this year in Halifax? We said, why not? We got our flights. We split a 4-bedroom apartment. It was the Dalhousie University residence. We had to get a phone line installed for the month of May so we could have dial-up internet. But we set ourselves up. We were on a little low budget back then, but we got ourselves set up, and we all got hooked, and we were already hooked on junior hockey as it was. But when it came to the Memorial Cup, we, the story that people that know me know this story. Why not? I'll tell it on here. So here we were in this Dalhousie residence. Obviously, people have moved out for the summer. So say we had to install a phone line for them, pay for it for a month, so we'd have dial-up internet. It didn't have a television. So what we ended up doing was, I ended up doing, let's be honest, I ended up getting myself to a Zellers and bought a 13-inch TV. Zellers is out of business now, so I can really tell this story. And then at the end of the tournament, I returned it, boxed it back up again. It was a 13-inch, 15-inch TV, boxed it up, and took it back on the Saturday before the final on Sunday. Took the TV back to Zellers. I'm sure nobody's ever gone to post-secondary school has ever done something like that. But yes, did that over the 10 days of the Memorial Cup. It became Doyle-ing a television, was the term that was used. But hey, we did that. I think for each of us for the tournament, our accommodations cost us $175. A little different now, but that got me hooked on this tournament. And ever since, going from Halifax to Regina to Guelph and Quebec City and on and on and on. Kelowna next year. Kelowna was in 2004, a beautiful place as well, and just kept on going from there.
I love that. Doyle-ing a TV. And now we know, Terry Doyle, now we know why Zellers is out of business. Thanks
Absolutely.
for that. We are speaking to you just ahead of Game 2, London's first appearance at this tournament. But of course, the opening game features the host, Rimouski, taking on Gavin McKenna and the Medicine Hat Tigers. Big comeback for Medicine Hat. Big game for Gavin McKenna. But what was the atmosphere like with the home team playing its first game?
There was excitement. I honestly, as a Memorial Cup, and of course I can compare Memorial Cup to Memorial Cup, I thought the crowd was a little subdued. I thought it was going to be rocking a little bit more than I expected, or than what I saw, but they were still into it. Certainly a little nervous energy, I think, around them as well. But it was funny. As the game was going on, there were little boos for Gavin McKenna at times, and he didn't do anything to annoy anyone. It was just that's that superstar treatment. They recognize the name. They're going to get on his case a little bit. But that was the first time I saw Gavin McKenna in person, and I was impressed. One of those players, the puck just finds him, and then he finds things to do with the puck. He had a play at the blue line, looked like there's no way he was going to keep it in. Did a little spin move, put it between his legs, and created a chance, or a saucer pass in front, or the first goal where it's a little flip play, he put it off the goal post and tapped in by his teammate. So I was quite impressed, but it's interesting, and it might even be the vantage point I have. I'm up at the one end zone, and I'm sure if you're sitting right in the seats, you'd feel a little bit of a different atmosphere as well in the rink. But, it's certainly very interesting. Some Memorial Cups, I know Halifax, I go back to that one where, 3 minutes before the opener, the fans are already quite into it. They kind of had to build into it a little bit when it came to the Rimouski supporters, and they were down, and then they went ahead, and of course Medicine Hat came back, so they kind of rode the wave a little bit throughout the game.
And obviously, Rimouski makes it to the Q final, but Moncton emerges as the champion. So Rimouski, in it just the slightest way, kind of backs in as hosts. Look, I know enough, Terry, to never write off a team coached by Gardner McDougall, which Moncton, of course, is. But you and I have seen this London team all season long. I was just having conversations earlier today. There's not a soul that I'm talking to back here in Ontario that thinks anybody can touch London this year at this tournament or elsewhere. How are you handicapping this one?
I think I'm with you. I'm with you from that standpoint. Moncton London final is what I would say if you said, okay, who's in the final? I'm going with Moncton London in those as a final, and then you just never know what happens. Does someone get banged up as the tournament goes on and everything from that standpoint? So I think it'll be quite interesting to see it play out. Gardner McDougall has had success everywhere he goes. Of course, that UNB program has just been lighting it up. Goes with the under 18s, wins there. And now with Moncton, with his son as the GM as well, and just jumped right in. And of course, in Ontario, we've said everything about the London Knights over the years. And the impressive thing for me is the adjustments Dale Hunter and his coaching staff are able to make. I'm sure they did lots of scouting on Moncton leading into this. Dale said that not only video, but talk to some contacts around the country that he has about the teams, and then makes those adjustments. And we see that whether they're playing the Sarnia Sting or the Oshawa Generals, or playing, in this case, the Moncton Wildcats, or the Medicine Hat Tigers. Dale and his coaching staff are willing to make those adjustments, and I think that's where it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out over the next week or so, to see how it all comes together. But and you mentioned Rimouski. You know what? I always think if the host makes their Final Four in the league, I'm good. I'll give them the check mark. If they go out in the first or second round, then I'm like, the aroma isn't as good. But if you make your league Final Four, I'm okay with that. Saginaw made the league Final Four in the O last year, losing to London. Then they play London again in the Memorial Cup. And so with Rimouski, they made it to the Final Four. They made it to the league championship series and lost to Moncton. So nobody has any extra rest in this tournament, which I think is a big factor. St. John with McDougall 2 years ago had the long rest. And I remember he called themselves the underdog coming into the tournament. Jay McKee was coaching the Bulldogs, turned to him and said, "Hey, Gardner, are you healthy?" "Yeah, you're not the underdog," because the other teams had gone through long series. That was right in the meet the coach's press conference, because McDougall kept saying, "Oh, we're the underdogs, we're the underdogs." And Jay finally stopped, and you dealt with Jay plenty as well. He finally turned to him and said, "Hey, Gardner, are you healthy?" "Yep." "Okay, then you're not the underdog." Right then and there, I think Jay had heard enough of the underdog thing coming from Gardner McDougall, who Gardner's always good for a quote. He'll sometimes, if you ask this question, he might give you this quote instead. It's an interesting quote. You might get a chuckle out of it, but he'll answer the question if he wants to.
I think it's a fair assessment all around to say if that team makes the Final Four, there is none of that aroma. It's a fresh scent, shall we say. And it sounds like they are ramping up for the London Moncton game at the arena as we catch up with you, Terry. I'll let you get to that, but really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your passion for this game with us on the podcast. Thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely. Anytime, you know where to find me.
Dan, not the OHL specifically, but let's talk about coaching and Paul Maurice, who used to coach in the Ontario Hockey League, and his idea that coaches don't belong in the post-game handshake lineup. And what happens after the Leafs Panthers series that we just talked about earlier in this episode? The coaches shake near the bench and the players go down the line. I don't know why somebody didn't think of this before or bring this up before. I think this is a fantastic idea. Can we just do away with coaches out there in their suits and their fancy shoes out on the ice? Let the players do that, and the coaches can take care of things over by the benches.
Yeah, I don't know. I admittedly, I slightly disagree with it. And the reason I disagree with it is the coaches are part of this landscape, right? A big part of it. You just talked about Paul Maurice and him getting his name finally on a cup last year and everything he's doing with Florida right now. I think they're a huge part of this, but more importantly, as a guy who has been not nearly at this level, obviously, but in these situations, championship games where you're playing against another coach, another team, I love just the opportunity to extend that respect to those players in that handshake line. And sure, maybe there's other ways to do it. And I get Paul Maurice's point. Oh, well, leave it to the players. This was between them. I just think it's a respect thing. And I think everyone on that bench, everyone involved with that team at the ice level, it's an opportunity to extend that respect. And I think the coaches are part of it. So I have no issue with it.
I'm shocked. I'm honestly, well, I shouldn't say shocked. I'm more than a little bit surprised though. I thought this was a no-brainer. I don't disagree that coaches are obviously a part of it, but what the hell does Craig Berube care what Brad Marchand thinks of him in the handshake line? Brad Marchand can go through the handshake line and talk to Austin Matthews if he wants to, but the coaches, and they can just do their thing. Coaches can shake hands with coaches and they can congratulate one another and tell each other how great they think they are and book a golf date for later in the summer. And the players, the ones that were out there with the blood, literally, the sweat, literally, and the tears, literally, for a minimum of 240 minutes over the course of a series, they should be out there at center ice shaking hands. It makes no sense whatsoever that the coaches are out there. None. You'll never convince me. I'm going to go the Paul Maurice way everywhere.
Oh, fair enough. Like, I mean, yeah, you're welcome to that point of view. I just think that the coaches are intimately in that battle. They're on the strategic level, line matching, chirping, you name it. They're right there in the heat of the battle the whole time, making every adjustment, calling every line change, doing it. Like, I think it's just they're part of it. They're very much part of it. And I think at the end of it, I think both sides, winning and losing, appreciate the opportunity to extend respect to everyone that was a big part of it like that, including the coach. So yeah, maybe you don't need every equipment person, door banger, every suit that's behind that bench. But I think the head coaches certainly are part of that. And I think they like the opportunity to extend that respect. And I'm sure a lot of the players say, yeah, I want to, you know, Paul Maurice beat me this time around. I wouldn't mind shaking Paul Maurice's hand at the end of the time too. So I don't know. I'm okay with it.
Send him a text later. Everybody's got everybody's number. And let me just think about this for a second. You said chirping. You're not telling me, Dan Mahar, are you, that coaches chirp the players on the ice too? I thought that was a no-no. You're not supposed to do that. You never talk to the other players on the team, the players on the other team.
Yeah, sorry, I meant more chirping each other, because you can talk to Paul Maurice about he and John Cooper's war of words going back and forth a bit. So I think I just feel like they're in it, and I'll throw this question back at you. What really is the downside of them being on the ice? Is it? Uh,
Yeah, that's fair, but a bit of a cop out, right? What's the point of them being on the ice? Like they just they can shake hands with each suits, shake hands with suits, skates, shake hands with skates. See, easy. I solved all of hockey's problems right there. Skates on skates, suits on suits, done.
it just feels like an omission to me. Feels like if you're leaving the field generals out of the after party, it feels like it's an omission. That's all.
All right, be that way if you want to be that way. I really thought we would just agree on this and shake hands virtually right here and move on with another topic, but I guess not. The next topic to move on to, though, is the inbox, which was flooded this week, and we love it. Keep them coming. OHL podcast at Rogers.com. As promised, every email got auto-forwarded right to Dan Mahar, so he was getting bugged in the middle of the night. Fantastic. Keep it coming. We'll keep the auto-forward on for a while. But one of the best we got, Dan, was from Nick, who really gave a thoughtful response to the whole London Knights thing and appreciated our perspective on that last week. Look, we know that when you are a team that goes to 8 OHL championships and wins 6 of them in a mere 19 years, it's pretty damn impressive. And you're going to have 19 other fan bases furious with you, throwing out all kinds of allegations, this, that, the other thing. But as we discussed, every good story needs a good villain. And the Ontario Hockey League has it in spades when it comes to the London Knights. But here's the other thing. Love them, lump them. You can't run away from the record that has been created over the past quarter century, really, since the Hunters took over. And what Nick points out very well in his email to OHL podcast at Rogers.com is that the London Knights now are a brand, a well-known brand, and a strong brand. I mean, put them up there with Coca-Cola if you want to, because 30 years ago, go back to the mid-1990s when the London Knights were a team that won, remember, historic low of 3 wins in a season. That was the London Knights. Players thinking about their next level of hockey in the Ontario Hockey League would not have wanted to go anywhere near the city of London and the old Ice House. You tell me now, as Nick points out in his email to us, when you think of going to the Ontario Hockey League, where might be the most desirable place to play? That, of course, would be London for myriad reasons. But the brand, as Nick points out, is incredibly strong in London.
Oh, that's very fair. And you talk about the 90s. I think part of that brand was probably tied to those ridiculous purpley green jerseys.
Oh, so bad. Like, can they just stop bringing that back even for fun? It's hideous. It's hideous.
All I know is you're not winning many hockey games in those things. So, yeah, they shifted the brand on and off ice. And you're right. And you look at it this way. We talk about the recruitment battles the OHL is going through. And oftentimes most teams look at through the lens of how do we convince these players that they should want us? Whereas when you're a London Knight, that organization, you get a call from them. They want you. They're bringing you to camp. It's got to be an honor. You got to think, wow, this team wants me. And that means they see something in me that there is pro potential, because pretty much everyone they bring into that organization is someone they really see something in that's a value, that can progress with that team as they always improve throughout the year. So I think it's a different mindset with the brand of the London Knights now. Is a lot of teams would be lucky to have me as a player. I'd be lucky to have the London Knights. So it's a different mindset with that team, because you're right. That brand that's what it says. It's, if I'm going to go there, I'm going to probably be part of a winner.
Exactly. And you're going to play in front of a packed house in a really nice arena. Other teams starting to make some upgrades, even Owen Sound this offseason, going to be doing some touch-ups around the Bayshore. We've already talked about what Kitchener is doing. Oshawa's got some work coming their way again. All of this is what teams are going to have to do in this new hockey landscape. And if you want to see the best way to do it, you look to London. And I think one thing that does get overlooked when we talk about the London Knights, and you and I have talked about this before, Dan, and that is the consistency that the team is able to offer, because obviously the general manager and the head coach just so happen to be the owners as well. And no other team will be able to boast the same head coach for 20 plus years anymore. It just doesn't happen that way. I think the closest example we could use is the 8-year contracts given to Rob Wilson in Peterborough and James Richmond in, I almost said Mississauga, in Brampton now.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely true that you don't see coaches last really any length of time in junior franchises much anymore for a lot of reasons. The really good ones move up into the pro ranks. There's not much of a leash anymore for the bad ones, for lack of a better term, but the ones who haven't gotten the results. So yeah, it's almost unheard of for a coach to sign those kind of extensions, and even ones like the ones you just referenced often come without clauses, right? For going pro or going to the NHL. So you might not see a Rob Wilson stay there for the full 8 years. Who knows what his plans are? But yeah, to have a guy who's that level of Dale Hunter basically say, yeah, I like it here. We make lots of money. I control everything I need to control. We get results. This is a good situation for me, and I don't have any interest in moving up the chain. That's rare. And that's that consistency, that reliability. When you're a player going through those doors and you know that your entire 3 or 4 years in that organization, you're going to have that head office, that bench team, that's something that would appeal. Whereas a lot of cities, it's, yeah, I signed my contract to play here, but is coach going to be here at Christmas? Is he going to be here next year? That's got to be a factor.
Huge part of the brand, no question about it. So for all the success that we've already highlighted again for the London Knights, 8 trips to the OHL Championship, 6-2, very nice record. That means 6 trips then to the Memorial Cup, but 2 and 4 in those 6 trips to the Memorial Cup. By the time you and I meet again 1 week from now, Dan Mahar, will the London Knights have added a 3rd Memorial Cup to their trophy case?
Well, I'm going to have to stick to my guns where I said on last week's pod that I think the London Knights will win the Memorial Cup this year. Do I feel 100% confident in that? I'm not going to say yes there, because I just think the other 3 teams are really strong. They're going to give them a tough game, and when games are 1 or 2 goal games, a bounce, a broken stick, a penalty, anything can change it. So I know it's hedging a little, but yes, to answer your question, I think the London Knights will get number 3 next weekend.
Just like suits should stay out of the handshake line, the London Knights will win the Memorial Cup. So there you go. They're going to have their 3rd by the time we meet next. If that's not the kiss of death, Dansky, I don't know what is. That's the Stone Cold OHL podcast guarantee.
Absolutely. We just sunk you, London. Sorry about that.
That man over there, his name is Dan Mahar. You'll find him on X at his name, Dan Mahar. I'm Mike Farwell on X at Farwell_OHL. Please, before this Friday, May the 30th at noon, buy a 50-50 ticket. Help us raise more money for cystic fibrosis research. Just go to cf5050.ca. The take-home jackpot, more than $50,000 already. I bet you could find a way to use that money. Maybe buy season's tickets in the city where you love watching junior hockey. And Dan and I will be back in 1 week's time after the London Knights have been crowned Memorial Cup champions right here on the OHL podcast.